My name is Margaret Doyle. I am 61 years old, and what I am about to share with you will forever alter the way you perceive the bonds within your own family. 3 days ago, I found myself standing on a rugged trail just outside Baltimore, where I discovered that the illusion of safety is nothing more than a comforting tale we weave for ourselves, until the unforgiving edge of a cliff shatters that delusion. But before that harrowing plunge, there existed a life that appeared idyllic, one beautiful enough to conceal the insidious shadows creeping along its periphery. For over 4 decades, Patrick and I nurtured a home that carried the warm scents of freshly brewed coffee and polished lemon oil. Our abode was a modest, narrow brick townhouse, nestled just a few streets from the bustling harbor. Patrick earned his living by restoring vintage boats, his hands bearing the scars of countless hours spent coaxing weathered wood back to its former elegance. I dedicated my career to being a school principal, dispensing tissues to tearful children, offering words of encouragement, and penning reassuring notes to fretful parents. I made it a point to remember the names of every child who sought a gentle refuge in the chaos of school life. In the tranquil evenings, we would stroll along the waterfront, counting the gulls as if they were beads on a rosary, a simple ritual that grounded us. Together, we raised 2 sons who became the heartbeats of our existence. Daniel, our firstborn, was the vibrant soul of our household, always quick with a laugh, eager to lend a hand, perpetually tinkering with old radios or doodling intricate bridge designs in the margins of his notebooks. 5 years later, Ethan arrived, a quieter presence, thoughtful in a manner that compelled me to lean in closer to truly hear his soft-spoken insights. I loved them both with an unyielding ferocity, much like the tide's relentless embrace of the shore, constant, undeniable, and eternal. Sundays held a sacred place in our family rhythm. After attending church, we would convene around the sturdy oak table that Patrick had meticulously carved with his own hands. Daniel would animatedly share his aspirations for an engineering program, painting vivid pictures of the cities he dreamed of constructing and how innovative designs could transform urban cacophony into harmonious symphonies. Ethan, seated across from him, would poke at his food with little enthusiasm, his gaze often drifting toward the window as if the outside world held secrets waiting to be whispered. When Daniel teased him playfully, Ethan would offer a faint smile and allow the moment to dissolve without protest. I chose to interpret his reticence as a sign of inner peace, a quiet contentment rather than something more troubling. Our summers were flavored with the simplicity of tomato sandwiches and the earthy aroma of sawdust. Patrick imparted his woodworking wisdom to the boys, teaching them how to plane boards until they gleamed like polished gems. I, in turn, instructed them on practical life skills, packing lunches efficiently and offering apologies before wounds could fester into resentment. We weren't wealthy by material standards, but our home overflowed with laughter that far outshone any collection of fine furniture. At dusk, the 4 of us would perch on the front steps, observing neighbors amble by, exchanging tales as the sky transitioned from fiery hues to a deep navy blue. Yet, even in this tapestry of joy, there were subtle disruptions, like faint static interrupting a beloved melody. I would overhear fragments of arguments that abruptly ceased upon my entrance into a room. Once, I discovered a cracked picture frame discarded in the workshop, with no one claiming responsibility for the damage. Another time, I glimpsed Daniel gripping a slim sheaf of bank statements, his jaw clenched in determination while Ethan averted his eyes to the floor. Patrick dismissed these incidents with a reassuring wave, insisting that brothers forged their bonds through stormy trials. If happiness could be captured in a single photograph, ours was snapped mere moments before an inevitable blink disrupted the scene. I reassured myself that families were resilient, designed to bend rather than shatter. Little did I know then that the harbor concealed treacherous depths and that cliffs possessed an eerie ability to eavesdrop on human frailties. The year was 1999, a autumn in Baltimore that bit with an unusual chill. Daniel had just celebrated his 20th birthday, returning home late from college classes with grease-streaked hands from assisting Patrick in the workshop. His mind was a whirlwind of inventions, always plotting the next breakthrough. Ethan, at 15, was still navigating high school, grappling with the long shadow cast by his elder brother. That fateful October night remains etched in my memory like a scar that never fades. Dinner awaited on the table, a succulent roast chicken infused with rosemary plucked from our windowsill herb pot. Patrick had set the places meticulously, and I found myself glancing repeatedly at the clock. 8 o'clock passed, then 9, and by 10, a vice of worry tightened around my chest. Daniel was never this tardy without a phone call. Perhaps he lingered with friends, Patrick suggested, though I detected the underlying tension in his tone. Ethan retreated to his room, feigning study, but a peculiar flicker danced in his eyes when I inquired if he'd seen his brother. "No, Mom," he mumbled, avoiding my gaze entirely. By midnight, neighbors had rallied, joining Patrick with flashlights in hand. They scoured the dimly lit alleys, the abandoned shipyards, and the winding trail near Jones Falls. I stationed myself at the window, whispering prayers, each passing car's headlights drawing me hopefully to the door. At dawn, Patrick returned, his face a mask of devastation I will carry with me forever. "They found him," he uttered, his voice fracturing like brittle glass. Daniel's body had been discovered at the base of a rugged gorge on the city's outskirts, jagged rocks piercing the shallow stream below. The authorities ruled it an accident, a tragic slip in the enveloping darkness. The news crushed me. I collapsed onto the floor in my somber black dress, the same one I'd worn to my mother's funeral years prior. Ethan's response to the tragedy was eerily composed. At the service, he sat with an impassive expression, as serene as if grief had bypassed him entirely. I attributed it to shock, to the bewildering numbness that often afflicts the young in the face of profound loss. Patrick remained steadfast by my side, offering solace in hushed tones, though even then a veiled shadow lurked in his eyes, something unspoken, a burden he carried alone. The funeral blurred into a haze of anguished sobs, wilting flowers, and an unrelenting ache of irrevocability. Burying my firstborn son entombed not only his body but also the myriad dreams he had harbored. In the desolate days that followed, I feared my heart might succumb to the overwhelming weight. Then Ethan transformed. He began assisting with household chores unprompted, appearing in Patrick's shop to offer aid, and checking on me during moments of solitude. He evolved into the dutiful son I hadn't anticipated, and I convinced myself this was his unique method of mourning, of bridging the chasm Daniel's absence had created. I embraced this shift as a fragile consolation, oblivious to the sinister reality interred alongside my eldest in that forsaken gorge. The years succeeding Daniel's death flowed like viscous water, deliberate and inexorable, etching fresh scars into our daily existence. I attempted to mend the pervasive silence with mundane routines, grading stacks of student papers, preparing nourishing meals, and sweeping the porch where Daniel once whistled absurd tunes. Patrick immersed himself in his boat restorations at the docks, his hands perpetually occupied, his gaze perpetually distant, as if peering into an abyss only he could see. Ethan matured rapidly before our eyes, and for a fleeting period, I persuaded myself he represented our redemption, a second opportunity to reclaim what fate had pilfered. He graduated high school without pomp or circumstance, then apprenticed under his father, mastering the art of revitalizing wood with a tenderness that suggested each stroke might atone for an unnamed transgression. In his late 20s, he wed Clara, a florist from an adjacent parish whose innate sweetness enchanted all who met her. She would arrive bearing vibrant lilies for our kitchen table, addressing me as Mom with genuine warmth, and insisting on helping with the dishes as if she had always belonged. On Sundays, her laughter resonated effortlessly, seamlessly weaving into our cherished traditions without altering their essence. For a time, I dared to believe the razor-sharp edge of our sorrow had finally blunted. When their children arrived, a boy followed by a girl, I allowed myself to envision that life had restituted what it had cruelly seized. Our home once again echoed with the joyous patter of tiny feet across the hardwood floors. Patrick crafted exquisite wooden cradles and toy chests, infusing them with the same love he had bestowed upon our sons. I resumed reading bedtime stories from the familiar rocking chair where I had once cradled Daniel, feeling a semblance of redemption in these tender moments. Ethan's woodworking enterprise flourished modestly. He established a quaint shop where patrons lauded his exceptional craftsmanship. Neighbors frequently commended his talents to me, and he would beam with pride when recounting his latest commissions. In a subdued manner, I swelled with pride for the man who had ascended from the ashes of tragedy to forge something enduring and beautiful. However, 6 months ago, an ominous shift materialized. Ethan and Clara's visits increased in frequency, but they carried an unfamiliar heaviness, no longer centered on shared meals or light-hearted banter. Instead, discussions invariably circled back to our future prospects. "Mom, Dad," Ethan announced one evening, his arm draped protectively around Clara, "you're both in your 60s now. It's prudent to organize affairs properly." His delivery was measured, rational, almost scripted. Clara gently clasped my hand, adding in her soft voice, "We simply want to ensure you're safeguarded." Initially, the proposal seemed innocuous. Revise the will, clarify distributions, preempt potential disputes. Yet, Ethan pressed further, advocating that he and Clara be designated as sole heirs, vowing equitable allocation to the grandchildren. Patrick pondered this with a nod, deeming it sensible. I offered a smile, but an icy shiver coursed down my spine. Clara's endearing phrases and Ethan's unwavering stare no longer evoked affection. They hinted at calculated schemes. At first, I dismissed my disquiet as unfounded paranoia. After all, Ethan was our sole remaining son, and Clara had consistently demonstrated kindness. But as their appearances grew more recurrent, the inquiries sharpened, the insistence intensified. "Mom, this house is far too spacious for you and Dad," Clara remarked one afternoon, her eyes appraising the intricately carved banister and the artwork adorning the walls. "Consider the maintenance. Wouldn't downsizing to a cozy condo downtown alleviate the burden? Less labor, greater ease." Patrick reclined in his chair, contemplative. "She raises a valid point, Maggie. The stairs are becoming challenging for me as well." My stomach knotted in protest. This isn't merely a house, it's our sanctuary. Every plank, every stone encapsulates our history. It's the essence of our shared life. Ethan's jaw tensed visibly. "Mom, you're being unreasonable. What if you take a tumble? What if Dad falls ill? You'll rely on us to manage affairs. It makes perfect sense for us to assume control preemptively." His tone harbored an unfamiliar sharpness, a resolute edge I couldn't disregard. That night, as I lay awake to the distant hum of the harbor, his words gnawed at me relentlessly. For the first time, Ethan didn't resemble a concerned offspring. He embodied a shrewd negotiator sealing a transaction. The coercion amplified. They advocated signing over power of attorney. "It's merely a safeguard," Ethan elucidated smoothly, while Clara poured tea in my kitchen with the familiarity of ownership. "Should an emergency arise, we can handle bills, oversee accounts, maintain operations seamlessly." Patrick inclined his head, nearly convinced. I observed doubt flicker in his eyes, mingled with weary surrender, as if capitulation offered respite from resistance. I felt ensnared, my instincts blaring alarms. Desperate, I dialed my sister Helena. Her voice crackled over the line, incisive as ever. "Maggie, can't you see it? If Ethan's thriving with his shop, why the urgency for your assets? Why the desperation for dominion?" Her observation struck like a thunderbolt, impossible to dislodge. That evening, I confronted Patrick in his workshop as he meticulously polished an antique boat helm. "Do you find it peculiar?" I probed. Ethan's fixation on our finances, his relentless push for authority? Patrick's movements halted. He scrutinized the wood's grain, lips compressed into a thin line. "Maggie," he murmured at last, "there's an aspect of Daniel's death I've withheld from you." The atmosphere grew dense, constricting my breath. "What are you implying?" Patrick slumped onto a stool, rubbing his face wearily. When he met my gaze, his eyes brimmed with concealed torment. "That night at the ravine," he began haltingly, "I trailed Daniel. I overheard the altercation. I witnessed Ethan's hands on his brother's chest. The earth seemed to lurch. My pulse roared in my ears. Patrick, what exactly did you observe?" He paused, then unleashed the revelation that demolished my world. Patrick's admission lingered like acrid smoke, refusing to dissipate. He recounted following Daniel that ill-fated evening, the heated shouts he overheard, and the damning sight of Ethan's shove. He disclosed the documents Daniel clutched, evidence of Ethan's embezzlement from our savings. Patrick confessed to suppressing the truth, rationalizing it as an inadvertent mishap. I struggled for air. My youngest son, who had anchored me through mourning, hadn't been my solace. He had orchestrated the catastrophe. And my husband of 40 years had harbored this secret like a lodged boulder in his gullet. We sat in stunned quiet until the phone shattered the stillness. I answered, voice quivering. "Mom," Ethan greeted buoyantly, his cheer contrived. "Clara and I discussed, and we believe you and Dad merit a special anniversary treat. How about a family hike this weekend? Crisp air, stunning vistas, just us." My veins iced over. Patrick, opposite me, intuited the conversation's gist. His complexion paled. "That's thoughtful, Ethan," I replied steadily. "Let me consult your father." Hanging up, Patrick seized my hand fiercely. "He's plotting our demise, Maggie. Just as with Daniel." We contemplated alerting authorities, but Patrick demurred. "What proof do we possess? Mere conjectures and buried secrets. I should have confessed long ago." He appeared utterly defeated. Sleep eluded us that night. Instead, we strategized. Patrick proposed, "If we proceed, I'll conceal my phone in my pack, initiating a recording upon the trail. Should we perish, evidence will endure." I absorbed the gravity of his scheme. We were bracing for potential execution, yet it was our sole armament. The following day, Clara arrived laden with bags, embracing me effusively, her grin overly expansive. "I procured treats for the hike," she trilled. "Granola, water, essentials. It'll be idyllic." Idyllic for them, I mused, a flawless backdrop for an accident. Patrick discreetly penned a missive to Helena, sealing it tremulously. "If we vanish," he instructed, "she'll know where to search and uncover the truth about Daniel and Ethan's intentions." I stowed the letter in our desk, fingers shaking. Dread clawed at my chest. We were marching into peril. But unlike Daniel, we wouldn't succumb mutely. Saturday broke with relentless clarity, the heavens seemingly jeering our apprehension. Ethan appeared early, whistling a merry melody that resonated like a dirge. Clara trailed, luminous in a sky-blue jacket, camera in tow like an eager sightseer. "Prepared for the escapade?" she inquired sweetly, pecking my cheek. Her touch chilled. Patrick and I mustered feigned enthusiasm, packs light but souls burdened. Before departing, he squeezed my hand. I knew the recording had commenced. The 2-hour drive to Baltimore's outskirts was agonizing. Clara harmonized with the radio. Ethan prattled about the grandchildren's delight in viewing our hiking snapshots. Each utterance hammered another spike into their facade. The trailhead teemed with families and runners, a stark irony to our impending doom. As we embarked, the path meandered gently initially, sunlight filtering through foliage. Clara paused frequently for floral photos, her laughter contrived. Ethan lagged, boots grinding gravel. Periodically, he queried, "How's it going, Mom?" "Need a break." His timbre was polished, vigilant. I sensed his scrutiny scorching my back. After 60 minutes, the incline sharpened. My limbs wearied. Patrick's respiration labored. We weren't seasoned trekkers. They exploited this. Clara bounded ahead, urging, "Almost there." Abruptly, she halted, gesturing. Behold that outcrop. The summit view must be spectacular. Let's ascend for shots. Terror gripped me. The spur was precarious, overhanging a 90-foot drop to jagged moss below. That seems hazardous, I cautioned. Unsuited for our age. Ethan advanced, flashing a disarming boyhood smile. Mom, it's brief. You'll rue missing it. Patrick and I exchanged glances. No retreat. Refusal would invite alternative schemes. The ascent tortured. Slippery gravel, aching joints, Ethan's supportive grasp predatory. Atop, the panorama unfolded. Verdant ridges, a sinuous silver river. Breathtaking, under different circumstances. Position here, Clara directed, edging us perilously close. Camera poised, her veneer cracked, smile venomous. Smile. Your final portrait. Wind howled ominously. Clara snapped photos, unyielding. Ethan loomed, shadow elongated. Retreat one step, Mom. Enhances the frame. Patrick's touch signaled readiness. We complied, anticipating the assault. Ethan surged, palms slamming our shoulders. Clara's lens dropped, visage triumphant. But Patrick countered fiercely, seizing Ethan's arm. If we descend, you join, he snarled. Equilibrium faltered. We teetered in a desperate tangle. Then abyss.